11th, 2020 meeting of the Rockingham County Planning Board and Board of Adjustment will now come to order. At this time, staff is going to review the means for conducting this meeting.
Thank you, Paul. This was, the meeting is being live streamed from home and from rooms in the governmental center. Can you hear me?
Put on your mic, although it won't be picked up on the videos. I think Paul's mic.
Am I good?
You're good.
Thank you. The meeting is being streamed live. We invited public who wanted to speak or participate in any way in the meeting to send us comments by noon today so that we could make arrangements for social distancing precautions. We did get some that signed up. They're either here or submitted comments by email. We also invited citizens to submit comments by email or phone. We did receive a couple, but otherwise the citizens who want to speak are here and will be called in turns to speak when the hearings are in progress, or when the hearings and the meeting are in progress.
At this time, the chair recognizes Mr. Tim Wyatt for our invocation.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be together once again to conduct the business of Rockingham County. We pray that tonight you will provide us with wisdom and good judgment as we consider the cases before us. We pray for the continued health and safety of all of the members of the board and your general protection of Rockingham County during this time. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
We now turn to approval of the minutes. I have two corrections for the minutes of the October 14th meeting. In the last paragraph of page 1, Chairperson Tim Wyatt needs to be changed to Chairperson Paul Sinowitz. And on page 2, in the 6th paragraph down, Chairperson Tim Wyatt needs to be changed to Chairman Paul Sinowitz.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes as with the amendments. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. The motion carries and the minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, were the September 9th minutes approved previously? I have them in my packet. They must have been if no one else has them.
I think there are 3 sets of minutes that
Yes,
everybody
3 sets of minutes.
has in their packets. I think those were the only ones that had corrections.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the September 9th minutes. I believe it says September 9th of 2020, and it should be 2019.
My copy says September 2019.
Mine has 2020. I'm sure staff will make the correct dates. I make that motion.
A second.
All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion to approve the September 9th meeting with a correction of the date is carried.
Do we need to do that for October as well then?
Well, it would be we've already approved the October and the September ones.
if you'd like to make a motion separate for the March 9th minutes.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the March 9th minutes as written.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the March 9th minutes. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion to approve the March 9th, 2020 minutes carries and is approved. The following are the guidelines for speakers. Any and all persons who would like to speak regarding any case being heard by the planning board must sign the case file roster prior to the beginning of the meeting. The exception here is that for this meeting, comments could have been emailed per the means discussed by staff earlier. For quasi-judicial hearings, any persons who would like to speak regarding any variance or special use permit case being heard by the planning board must be sworn in by the presiding board member prior to the case hearings. Additionally, each speaker must be recognized by the presiding board member prior to speaking. When recognized, each speaker must approach the podium and state their name and address before speaking. Unless otherwise specified, all testimony, evidence, and comments should be directed to the board chairperson or presiding board member. These are the case hearing guidelines. Each case will be presented to the board by a member of the planning staff. Following the staff presentation, the case applicant will be given the opportunity to brief the board regarding the case. Following the applicant's presentation, those who have signed up to do so will be granted the opportunity to speak against or in support of the proposal. If needed, the board chairperson reserves the right to set time limits for each speaker. After hearing from the public, the applicant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal. This will be followed by board discussion, motions, and voting procedures. At this time, we'd like to ask staff to present our first case.
Just before that, John and I talked about there's just a piece that I had left off of the agenda as an addendum to the procedures.
Sure. I'd like to address the board just as a reminder when we're looking at these cases. For example, here we have two special use permit cases, and we have a rezoning case. Just bear in mind that when we look at the facts that are presented, the evidence that's presented, we're going to apply that to what the UDO requirements are, the factors. The rezoning case in particular, you're going to look at the land use plan as well as the UDO. So just be mindful when we have folks to come in and they want to present information. If the board has questions for them, that we stay within that scope. And just as a reminder, the board can only make decisions based on the facts and the legal requirements and the policy requirements. So I just wanted to make that as a reminder to the board.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it. Thanks, John. First case is a special use permit case, 2010. A request to allow, a special use permit to allow a double-wide manufactured home in a residential protected zoning district. You've seen cases like this before. As you know, the residential protected zoning district does not allow that housing type, and there are a lot of areas in the county that were zoned that way when the ordinance was adopted, and in about 10 years after that, actually, some of those ordinances were changed to be more restrictive in those zoning districts. The case is located here below Reedsville. This is a vicinity map showing the property and its relationship to the nearby roads, and an aerial view of the property. This is an undeveloped property that the owner wishes to develop with a double-wide, Class AA manufactured home. This is the green dots here are where other manufactured homes, either single-wide or double-wide, are currently, have already been developed. These are properties that have already been developed with that type of housing. There were no calls or emails, either in support or opposition for this case. And I don't know if there were speakers, if there was anybody that was signed up.
No.
So if you take as evidence the applicant, the application, and the request itself, and the land use in the surrounding area, that's the basis upon which you'll hear this case. You'll consider it.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
The green dots, the current, were they in place prior to the change in the zoning?
Some of them, yeah, actually all of them were. If you didn't see a special use permit for any of them, then they all were pre-existing the ordinance. And there weren't, in this case, in this area, there weren't special permits requested.
Thank you.
I have a question. Go back to the green dots. How many manufactured homes are in this vicinity, and how wide is that vicinity? Is that half a mile, quarter mile?
This is basically a quarter mile. I did not count. I didn't really feel like it was appropriate to sort of keep a score. What I was demonstrating with this plan is just that there are other housing types like this, and it wouldn't be the only one.
Okay.
Carrie, it appears that directly next door, there's a 2002 manufactured home, I think, to the right. And I think on the other side, I believe it's a modular from 07.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely, and I should not have indicated modulars. These are just manufactured homes. So there'll be other properties that are developed with modular homes. But thanks for that detail, yeah.
So the home directly beside this is a manufactured house?
Letting me point. Correct.
Okay.
I was looking for a pointer. I need to have a laser pointer. I can show you that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the owner of the property one of the neighboring residents?
I don't believe that he is. You don't know that, Philip, do you?
The owner of the property?
He is, you're wondering if he already lives in this neighborhood?
Yes.
The tax bill is being sent in the Greensboro.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I didn't know where he did live, but he's not currently in the neighborhood. And just a little bit of background, the gentleman came to permit his home earlier in the year based on his observance of the area, and had to sort of cut his process short in order to get this special use permit approved. And you're here tonight to decide whether it's appropriate, certainly for this area and with any conditions that you might require.
I'd like to make a comment to you. I always like to allow people to use their property to the best of their ability. I'm just confused, kind of, and I understand that's why we're here tonight, but the conditions were put in, I'm very familiar with the area, so
Okay, good,
I
good.
understand what's going on, and
Yeah,
I don't think that a new pre-manufactured home is going to affect or decrease the value. It may increase it, in my opinion. But we put in conditions against these for a reason. I'm not sure. That's where I'm confused.
that is the reason why the special use permit mechanism was put in place when that residential protected zoning district prohibited them. That mechanism of asking one at a time was in order to look at individual situations. It was inviting that
That makes very good sense.
potential change, yeah,
That makes it clear. Thank you.
yeah, sure.
Are there any other questions for staff?
I suggest, Paul, that you go through the motions of opening and closing a hearing. Open the hearing, make the statement that there aren't comments, John, unless you feel otherwise. I think it would be good to let the record reflect that you did open the hearing
Well,
once you are ready for that.
You can make a motion to open and then make deliberations, ask further questions, evaluate evidence, documents, however you want to do.
okay, then I move that we open the hearing.
A second.
All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Okay, the motion carries.
So are we
Any further
looking-
discussion on this?
Okay.
No discussion. Okay, and is there a motion?
I'm comfortable making a motion, Mr. Chairman. And that motion would be that we approve the special request with the staff recommendations as listed, 1 through 3. I do feel the use and development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to minimum or promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. That the use or development complies with all required regulations and standards of this ordinance and with all other applicable regulations. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to minimum or to enhance the value of contiguous property. Or that the use or development is a publicly necessity. And that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County.
I second that motion.
A motion has been made and seconded that we approve this application with staff's recommendation of items 1 through 3, and that the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, that the use or development complies with all required regulations and standards of this ordinance and with all other applicable regulations, that the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property, or that the use or development is a public necessity, and that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in this chapter and in the Rockingham County Development Guide. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. The motion carries and the application is approved.
I'll iterate. Oftentimes, an applicant will ask me what just happened, sort of thing, and I just want to add that the request has been approved. The applicant will likely come in tomorrow morning for a permit to install the building.
Okay. Moving right along, staff will now present our second case.
Do we need to back out of the special,
No, this is also a special
Okay.
use, so we're still in the hearing phase. Well, excuse me one second, Carrie. We'll
Sure.
back out after the next one
Got it.
because the rezoning doesn't take
Got it.
a hearing.
I missed that. I didn't read that.
I'm sorry. Go
Fill up
ahead.
your mic. Your mic isn't on, I think that you...
Mine
Yes.
is.
I think I'm on. Green light's on.
Okay. This case is a special use permit to operate a rural family occupation for auto sales and repair. This is a case where a family operation has been in business for several years, and a building inspector went to the site, to a different building, and discovered the use and practice, and the owners did not understand the rules for having to make this request. So this is a request to bring the property into compliance. It's located here at the southeast part of the county in a neighborhood of smaller lots. However, this is a larger 3.5-acre lot. When we first addressed this property owner about this issue and gave him options, we explained the option of a rural family occupation and how it needed a minimum of 3 acres. The property owner went to the extent of purchasing additional acreage so that they could bring the property size into conformance, and then came to submit this permit. The business is located, as you can see, behind the house. The house is the first thing off the road. The garage is a little bit past the house. This is a site plan that demonstrates, hopefully your copies are better. It demonstrates the screening of the business from the road in the neighborhood with mature stands, small stands, but mature stands of hardwood around the business. This is a picture of the business as it's in operation now. We received 10, the 10 is what we counted, at least 10 citizens who called in support of the special use permit and the impact of the existing business on the neighborhood is in a positive way. There were no calls or emails in opposition.
There were no calls?
No calls or emails in opposition, but 10 phone calls supporting the request.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'll be corrected if I'm asking an inappropriate question. You said that this residence had been used for this business for quite some time.
The garage,
garage,
accessory
right.
building to the
Right.
resident. Yes, ma'am.
Do we know how long that was?
5 years. Is the applicant, did Mr. Harrison sign up to speak, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's
Okay.
ask him when he comes to the stand.
Okay.
Okay.
I believe it's 3 to 5 years, but I don't want to misrepresent
Okay.
his.
And there have been no complaints about this business?
We have not received complaints. In fact, we self-reported when we went to inspect a building out there. This was not generated by a citizen complaint.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
this was an officer just happening upon,
Yep. And then I will say the main reason why the inspector was concerned is he wanted to be sure that the building was built to the correct standards, and it will be. Actually, it is now. I went through that process of working together with the property owner to make sure that it was permitted properly.
so the building was permitted?
The building was permitted at a garage, as a garage.
Mhm.
With the approval of this special use permit, it will undergo a formal change of occupancy from a garage to a auto repair shop, and it will go through a series of building inspections. It's a type of permit called change of occupancy or
Okay.
change of use.
If there's no other question for the staff, we'll call the applicant up. Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Chester Thompson, Sr., please. Sir, if you would, before you give us your name and address, there's a Bible to your right. Could you place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence and testimony you shall present to the Rockingham County Planning Board on the matters at hand shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You may now take the podium, and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Chester Harrison Sr., 117 Rolling Hill Drive, Reedsville.
Okay, and what is it that you'd like the planning board to know about your application?
Well, I'd like to buy a few vehicles and repair them and sell them to the local car dealers and minor body repair.
I believe I read in your application that you're strictly a wholesale type business.
Yes, sir.
Any questions
I
for
do.
Mr. Harrison? Sr.?
Mr. Harrison, I have a couple questions. How long have you been, we know that this use has not been permitted up to this point, and this is why you're here tonight. How long have you been doing this kind of business?
My father was an auto body repairman, so I started off when I was about 12 years old and never had another job.
In this garage.
So in this garage,
Oh, in this garage, about 2 years and a half, maybe.
2.5 years. And so what you do is you will get cars from either the auto auction or
Yes.
wherever, and I know this because my father did this. You'll repair them and then sell them to, so you're not going to have a car lot here.
No, I'm not going to have a car lot. We'll carry them to different auto sales and sell it to them.
Got
I'll
it.
let them sell it for us.
That's all the questions I have.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Harrison Sr.?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Harrison, do you live on the property?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Harrison, I just want to make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Again, I'm familiar with this area also, and it's very residential. So, and you've got 10 people in the area supporting you, so apparently you're a very good neighbor.
I try to be.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We also have signed up to speak Mr. Chester Harrison Jr. And if you would, approach the Bible there and put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence and testimony you shall present to the Rockingham County Planning Board on the matters at hand shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You can now take the podium. And for the record, please state your name and address.
My name is Chester Harrison Jr. I stay at 4619 Sewell Court, Greensboro, North Carolina.
And what is it that you would like the planning board to know about your application?
Well, I wanted to confirm and let y'all know that it is a rural family occupation. At the moment, it's just me and my father. My nephew comes periodically, look over paperwork. As he was saying, our main goal is to be able to be a wholesale dealer, buy cars from the auction, do repairs to them. As it being a residential protected area, we don't plan to have a lot of traffic coming in and out of the area, so therefore we would have to transport the vehicles to your local dealers in Reedsville and sell them on their lots. So that's the purpose of trying to be a wholesaler.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Harrison Jr.?
I have one question. On any given day, about how many cars would you have at this?
I would say
Place.
typically if we buy anything from an auction, it may be 2 at a time. And a project like that, being that most of them are salvage vehicles, it could take easily 2 weeks to repair those vehicles. So we're going to be very, very low volume, as is just me and my father.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions for Mr. Harrison Jr.?
I'll point out to Julie, the site plan indicates the area where cars will be will be parked. That's part of the permit. And we worked that out with the applicant.
Yep.
And Carrie, can I just ask, was the site plan that they drew up, was that even a requirement for this? Is that just something they?
For rural family occupation, you have the development standards. Business shall not create noxious fumes, odors, traffic congestion, so forth. Basically, what I do is take those standards and apply what's necessary to prove those standards, and in this case, it's a site plan. That's how it isn't a specific requirement, no, but that is the simplest way to visualize and condition that he's following those standards.
Any other discussion? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve case number 2020-06. This action is consistent with the adopted Rockingham County Land Use Plan, and after review of competent material and substantial evidence in the case, the board makes the following findings for the 4 conclusions necessary: that use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, that the use of the development complies with all required regulations and standards of this ordinance and with all other applicable regulations, and that the use of the development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated as to maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property so that the use or development is a public necessity, and that the use of development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in this chapter in the Rockingham County UDO.
I second that.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the application for case number 2020-06. With the applicant must comply with the site plan approved by and any other conditions imposed by the planning board. The applicant is responsible for obtaining and complying with all required permits and approvals. The applicant must follow all the requirements for a special use permit which are listed in the Rockingham County Unified Development Ordinance. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. That the use or development complies with all required regulations and standards of this ordinance and with all other applicable regulations. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property, or that the use or development is a public necessity, and that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in this chapter and in the Rockingham County Development Guide. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries, and the application is approved.
A long, hard time period. Thank you, gentlemen.
Staff will now present our next case. This is rezoning. Do we need to back out of the hearing? I guess that's a question for John.
Yeah, well, you are no longer in a public hearing,
Okay,
so I don't know that you would have to make a motion to close it. John, does it?
I don't see why that would be. I mean, because it's the rezoning it's not necessarily a hearing, more
Right.
of
Okay,
So I think we're good. We have a clean break,
there you go.
a clean slate. This is a rezoning case, 2020-09, for about 60 acres at North Carolina 65 and 220 in New Bethel Township. The request is to rezone this acreage from residential agricultural and residential mixed to light industrial. The property is located within the economic development land class of the land use plan. The purposes and characteristics outlined here in this slide. I've also given you some more detailed information as a part of your, no, I haven't. So I'll read the details here. Purpose to accommodate and encourage new industrial and commercial uses in areas where local government supports substantial investments, water and sewer and transportation systems, lands outside of developed and urban transition areas, which are other land classes, where substantial capital investments are strongly encouraged to create new jobs and build the county tax base. This land class is intended for access to major transportation facilities and supported by public water and sewer, and there will be public water and sewer serving this site. The property is located here on the south side of NC 65. There's a property, two properties with frontage, and there's a small property in between them as far as the frontage is concerned. So this property was actually posted with two different public hearing signs to ensure that it was clearly marked. Some highlights from my staff report. This is a key growth interchange. The area is subject to the watershed protection ordinance as it does lie within the Little Troublesome Creek watershed. The area is to be served by public water and sewer. There will be state permitting approvals required. This is a large acreage, and it will be eventually a commercial, non-residential development. The technical review committee will review a submitted detailed site plan for compliance with various regulations and technical review, technical details at that point. All uses in the light industrial zoning district would be permitted should this zoning be approved. Those uses are definitely listed in your packet, and here for just for how I actually increase the size of this list so it looks like it's out of order. But the idea is just to demonstrate the variety of uses that are allowed. Not a conditional district, so the idea of what the property owner intends to do there is not germane to the hearing. This is about whether it's appropriately zoned for any of these land uses and for that district. Some uses would be permitted in this district, but with either special use permit or design standards. One citizen did submit comments in opposition, but Paul, I'll wait. Well, this isn't a public hearing. We won't be opening a public hearing here, so I'll read these comments after you finish asking me questions. Okay. And along with other public comment that is here, we'll enter these into the record.
So you want to read them into the record instead of having me read them into the record?
If at the point where we take other comments from the public, I would actually have you, I would have you read them into the record, but not as part of the hearing. That was the difference.
Okay.
Because it's not a public hearing.
That's fine. Okay. Any
Come back to the location.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Questions for me?
Any questions for staff on this case? There being no questions, I'll go ahead and read the email from, is it Ms. Nelson? Yes.
It is, and I'll just put it up on the screen for you as well. Excuse me. Cindy Nelson, 389 Sylvania Road. I would like to see the application for this rezoning. I believe that she has since seen the application and the read-ahead packet for the rezoning. I'd like to oppose it for the following reasons. There is too much traffic in this area already. You have traffic coming off 68 to 65. You have 73 traffic and 220 traffic all coming in this area. There's already a troublesome industrial site across the street from this area that has trucks pulling out onto the road, burning fires in an area that, if got out of hand, would be very dangerous with all the equipment around it. It is also very unattractive to view from the road. I think still we're talking about a property across the road off, across 220. Any industrial building in this area would be a complete quagmire. This has always been a desirable part of Rockingham County. The houses in this area are well kept and nice. This area of Rockingham County cannot handle residential and light industrial together. There are other parts of Rockingham County to develop other than this area that would be advantageous to the citizens. This has nothing but disaster written on it. I do not want it rezoned, nor do my neighbors. I have not seen any application to rezone. Again, we reached out to Ms. Nelson today. I don't believe that she signed up to speak.
No.
To see if she had any change to her comment or wanted to present it personally, but she has been given a copy of the application and the same packet that you have.
And this has been the only response from her?
Yes, sir, it is. Response.
In that case, we'll hear from, that's now in the record, so we'll go ahead with the speakers. Mr. James Gunter, please.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Do I need to be sworn in?
No.
Oh, okay. So my name is James Gunter, James William Gunter II. My wife and I own the property. If you look at it, quite a bit on the south side. If you look how it makes us see, we actually own the adjacent property that comes directly down. We own a couple of tracks there that butt up against it. First and foremost, I think that you guys as a commission have a pretty big responsibility for the county in terms of our growth plans. So we understand what the interstate represents for the heart of Rockingham County. And so we're kind of happy to see that investment. We do have some concerns about this property and specificity, so let me kind of walk you through what we've been looking at and thinking about it. First, as you see in the packet that you guys have, the original use of that property was actually a mobile home park. One of the concerns we have there is that the original sewage and water for that property was never, by our knowledge, ever disposed of properly. So the septic systems are still in the ground there as we know them. We've never seen them. I lived in this area about 40 years, so I've never seen them remove the actual septic systems. And then they also pulled their water from the wells there. So to our knowledge, again, I think one of the concerns we have from a water quality perspective in the aquifers there is, have those wells been capped appropriately? And when they start doing construction in that area with large machinery, which we would expect, that has there been any effort taken to protect the water in the system? And I've got several things. Should I break them in sections or keep going?
No, go ahead. Just.
All right, very good. Thank you. So second, water flow on that property. We do have some questions and concerns about it. In the staff report, it's reported that there's no watershed. I'm sorry, I forgot my notes. There's no water on the property. However, the southern border on the 034 property, the southern border of that property is a creek. So if you look, you see how it's not in a straight line. That actually is that actually is a creek bed right in there. So what our concern is from, we understand that this is being requested without any restrictions. Our concern here is both with the water in the aquifer, but also in that creek, and that is, the report mentions that it's part of the Troublesome Creek watershed that eventually, I think, flows into Reedsville Lake. The concern we have there is, what are the restrictions going to be for the property for water abatement for it flowing in there? We've actually, this property, since it became kind of shut down as a mobile home park, the property owner didn't do anything for the water. So from our farm perspective, we've had a lot of water runoff where we've had to deal with things from, from erosion to water quality coming off of that property. So we're certainly concerned that the farm itself has actually been in use well over 100 years, so we've had cattle on that property, and so we want to be a little bit, we obviously have our concerns about the water coming off. Again, I think we're supportive of it, but certainly not from without a restriction perspective. Next, the question we have is that the staff report also states that 70% of the property could be built upon. Our question was really, does that include any road or non-permeable surfaces? So when we look at the 70%, does that include parking lot, or does that mean there's going to be a building on 70% and then the other 30% could be parking lot? So that's another question and comment. We couldn't find that in the staff report. No, sorry about that. Didn't get a chance to.
I'll answer, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry, thanks. And then, really, you touched on something earlier, since it's, the list of things that are there for light industrial can go everything from adult entertainment to warehouse, right? We have a concern in terms of what is going to enhance the value of the property and the types of things that we want in the neighborhood. The other neighbor that mentioned about the property that's on 220 raises a very good point that my wife and I also agree on, is that there's basically a very large construction firm right at that intersection. There's no visual barriers for it. When they put in 73, if you followed that road down south, 73 invested and they put in a visual barrier to hide some of the areas as you go through that corridor. We find it kind of disappointing that the same attention hasn't been made in that corridor. So if you look it would be the southwest corner on that as it currently sits. If you've driven that road, I'm sure you guys have all seen that. So, through the expansion of the interstate, it's now turned it into a pretty much an open, and we respect the work that the Yates Construction Company has done, but, as far as adding value to the area, that's our question. Just reading the light industrial options there seem to certainly raise concerns on the types of things that could be there. So, certainly there are some attractive things for us on it, but understanding what can enhance the value of our property is really the question, that we have on that side of things. What kind of restrictions would be involved in that? So, I think that's I have that's the general questions and concerns that we have. Where to start?
Any questions for Mr. Gunther?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
How do you live on the property that adjoins this property?
I do. I can point out real quick. We actually live right here. And then there's sorry. And then we also, my brother lives in the property that's directly south of there. So the two open fields that you see butt up against houses.
And how many acres do you have?
In total, there's about 110 acres in that area.
And on your property, this is used as farmland?
Most of the property we do have a mobile home park that's on the southern, it's on the south side of Ogburn Mill Road, so you actually don't see it on that.
That's all I have for now.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Gunther?
Kerry, am I correct in saying that the technical review, no matter what happens here, but if it goes, to a further stage here, that technical review is going to be answering a lot of the questions?
It is. I can also answer 70% built upon area does include anything that will become impervious. So roadways, parking, anything that is that water can't permeate through. And this will it will raise to the level of state level approvals for erosion control, and we'll have stormwater measures based on the development itself that can't be known until we have until a development site plan is submitted, so as to know what that impact might be. And I'll double check this stream. I didn't see it on a USGS stream report, which is why I included it that way in the report, but I'll certainly check that out.
Yeah, thanks. Does
Does it flow directly down towards the Hendron Lane?
It comes out, it actually starts, you see the property here crosses over 65. It starts a little further on the north side of 65 there. By the time, about halfway down that property there's the elevation between that property and some of the other properties kind of bring it together. And by the time it's about halfway through that property, it's probably a 3 to 4 foot stream fairly consistently unless there's drought.
Yeah, and even if it's along the border there, it'll be buffered, whatever part of the stream is on this property, or whatever part of a stream buffer would be on this property from the stream would have to remain vegetated as it is, or be otherwise protected.
Thank you.
And Carrie, this might not have to do with necessarily the rezoning portion of this, but could you speak on if there was any wells or septic systems there? And
Typically, during development, abandoned systems and wells would have to be properly abandoned by the Department of Environmental Health. Existing systems would have to be properly abandoned and backfilled.
So that would be during the construction process in the next phase?
Before the it would actually, as part of a site plan approval.
And would this site plan approval be before next week? So it would be after next week, there would be a rezoning, and then it would require, approval would be after?
Correct. It's typical that the rezoning is done first. A particular user would then have specific needs that would be designed for the site after the rezoning. So whomever that user might be will have particular requirements for parking, for building sizes, for orientation for driveways, all of the things that would have to be designed. Should the rezoning pass, that would be the next step.
I guess the larger question for the planning committee would be that corridor is largely owned by the same corporation. So if you look at the corridor, this is about 60 acres. There's probably, in essence, and I apologize, I'm doing it off the rough estimates, 300 acres in that corridor, which is the 65 and 68 corridor. I guess my question there is, this is a micro part of this, and the other neighbor's comment kind of rings true to the comment is, what's the general plan for that? We've looked at the road, what the road plan is for 65 and 68 in that area, but a lot of that is still zoned similarly to this, and is there a plan?
So
around
as
that?
you can see, there's no secret to the fact that this owner is called the South Rockingham Corporate Park.
For sure.
And so they do have other holdings in that area, and I believe the ultimate intention would certainly be to develop more in this area. This is just the first ask. My assumption is they're working with somebody to try to develop for them, but that's typically what happens when an initial acreage.
We lived in a small town in North Carolina, in Apex, but
Okay.
when they were during their heavy growth.
Yeah.
But what we saw in that area was actually a kind of a plan in the area. So we knew and when people were buying in the area, they knew where the growth was going to be and what was planned for what. So
At this point, we have and we're updating our land use plan, but our land use plan identifies this as a key growth intersection, a key growth corridor. So it doesn't lay out specific design for the area, but it certainly does identify it as the most intense economic development area that the county desires. In that, and that I can
So
go
is-
back to that slide if we need to in the land
Well,
use
no, I think
related plan.
it's a fair question. I guess the question that we have as residents in that area is, should we expect more single request and single request and single request, or is there ever going to be a plan in that area other than it's reserved and we like the location because it's close to the airport, right? So,
Well,
what is the long-term plan there?
We've been discussing that as part of the land use plan update. Right now, we've hired a consulting firm to update our land use plan and our development ordinance. There is not right now a positive decision to do an area plan for that area, other than just to identify it as a growth area. But that would be a question for you to bring forth
And is
to.
that open to the public as well? Is that?
There'll be a public process in adopting
Okay.
that plan, so.
Very good, thank you.
And obviously, Emily and I will both make note that you'd like to be
Absolutely.
notified
Very good.
when there's updates to it. In fact,
Thank you.
there's some information that we can share.
Yeah,
Emily,
no,
that
it's-
information that
it's-
was presented to the commissioners at the last.
I would say
I have one more
it's
question.
not of a huge surprise to us that area with the interstate and its access, but
How long have you lived here?
I was born in, not too far from there, so yes. I went to college, and then after, probably outside of 10 years of my life, most of it.
So you consider yourself a native?
I would think so, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Gunter?
Thanks for
Thank you,
your
sir.
time.
I see that your wife is also signed up to speak. Is she basically going to echo your sentiments about this?
Yes.
If so, then we'll note that you have the same arguments, and we'd like to keep the thing moving along here.
Yes. I do want to make it clear that he was born and raised on a farm, on this property.
We get that.
I mean, you said I grew up near there, and I was like, oh.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Any discussion regarding the application?
I have
So
a question. Is there, we can't limit what can be done on this property.
That's correct. It's the applicant's prerogative to have not requested a conditional zoning. And I mean, I believe, and I will say I didn't strongly advise against it based on the class of land use intended for this area.
Repeat that, please.
Because of the land use class intended for this area, I did not, I might have strongly recommended a conditional zoning, but I did not because of the intensity of this land use class, the expected intensity that's listed for it.
I will make a comment. This is a struggle. Because I totally understand being a native of this area. I totally understand
I
what
get that
it
as well.
is to have a farm out there.
Mhm.
I also totally understand that from my earliest memory, we knew that 220 was going to grow. And we knew that section right there was going to be a key. It was going to be like a keystone.
Well, one thing I can say, there is a site plan process, and it's my habit after an experience like this and hearing public input to share that with the applicant and say, what can you potentially do as a good neighbor to the farmland that's right there? And it's better than nothing for me to say, but my experience is usually it's pretty cooperative on the part of a developer, not wanting to be a bad neighbor.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I wish the applicants would show up and so that they could hear the testimony.
And I believe the applicants have been encouraged to hear the testimony, Tim, to be listening to the live stream. And the applicant also invited me to reach out to them if you had questions.
Well, of course, I'm going to have a lot of questions of them, but, I mean, without sort of being able to hear what their vision. I mean, I understand that we can't nail down or drive down into minutia or even very few details, but I really would like to hear an overall vision of what this is going to look like. I mean, is it going to be Yates Construction? Is it going to be something different?
Well, the positive here is that Gates Construction is probably living under all sorts of grandfathered circumstances and situations, and this is an opportunity to develop a property properly. It is important that they, at this point, they are just requesting, and their intent is just to get a zoning district established at this point, and they don't have more detailed information to share.
So does this give us the opportunity for us maybe to set the vision a little bit? Because you touched on it here. This is not, that Yates is grandfathered in under a lot of old ordinances, but this is our opportunity to make this, to do this well, to begin with.
It's because the UDO includes standards. It's not our opportunity necessarily to impose a vision, but it's our opportunity for new development to follow an ordinance that's newer than the development that's already there.
It also has to pass muster with the Technical Review Committee.
And the
And
state-
being a member of that committee, I can tell you, there's a host of people on there that scrutinize every single detail of a proposed site plan. Soil conservation, water conservation, runoff, Duke Power, DOT, I mean, they're all in this. So the process
Appreciate
is
that
lengthy.
comment, Paul. That's
So
a good-
there is some thought to
Oh,
what,
yes.
like,
It's
and
not
I'm
just-
looking for years, what it would look like.
It's not a case where, okay, the land's been rezoned, let's slap up a chemical plant.
Right.
Can't
Down to
happen.
landscape buffers and.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, all that has to be considered. Water runoff, watershed. Chances are, if, as Mr. Gunter pointed out, there's abandoned septic systems and all that, the Rockingham County Soil Conservation is going to be all over that.
Yeah, and, as I think about it, his farm is there with his cows. What, will the cows, and he obviously wants to maintain that because he's been there all his life. So I just want to make sure that, while we're trying to increase the commercial output of our county, because that's good for us all the way around, are we doing this with some forethought and making sure that there's at least.
Well, we are,
Yeah, and you're saying you do.
we are to the extent that all we're saying is that, yes, we're going to rezone this land, but from then on, because it meets the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance and the requirements of the land use plan, but after that, it's out of our hands and into a body of people on the Technical Review Committee that it might take a year for a site plan to get approved, to put anything up on that property. Could take even longer.
Well, it depends on how quickly, the Technical Review Committee can meet fairly quickly. It depends on how much design work has been done.
Yeah.
It's really up to the applicant to follow that schedule.
I'm wandering into mission drift here, but I feel comfortable sort of at least asking these speculative questions just so that I can make a good decision. So, but I think you've answered.
Yeah, our decision
answered my
has to be based on the fact that this request conforms with the intention of the Unified Development Ordinance and the Land Use Plan. Is there any other questions or discussion?
I just have some discussion, and I don't want to be here all night.
Yes,
And I
sir,
don't want
go
to open a
ahead.
can of worms. The only negative I can come up with it is in the wording. It says, "This would potentially impose significant harm on the neighbors and surrounding community." we've heard testimony or statements that it could, but we haven't heard anything to the, against that. Just
Are
for
you-
thought for the members.
Are you looking at the consistency statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is this, Chris?
He's looking at the options for a consistency statement at the end of the staff report.
And I know that statement's in all the things that we look at. But we've heard, I want to call it testimony. It's not testimony, but we've heard statements from, and we haven't heard a rebuttal to that, is the only reason that I'm not going to make a motion. Personally.
Well, I can also add that the Board of Commissioners will be holding the public hearing, and certainly the applicant.
And they're going to
goes-
make a final decision.
And yes, and they're going to make a final decision. But at that point, the case will be heard, as it will. Comments will be heard, brought into the record. You're at the point where you're just deciding whether you recommend it as conforming to the land use plan and the UDO. And you can strike a sentence like that if whomever is making a motion do not have to repeat word for word the recommended motions.
Carrie, water's on site, right, or there at the site, but sewer is not at the moment.
It will be. Though the site will be served by public water and sewer down Sylvania Road.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the request and to adopt the statements required by General Statute 153A-341 and 153A-342. And under additional comments, I would note that there are light industrial uses directly across US 220 from this site.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve application 2020-09. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. We have 4 votes in favor. The motion carries, and the rezoning is approved. And folks, for the benefit of the Gunters, our approval is merely a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. In this case, what's our next date?
Pardon?
When is the next commission? When will the
It is
commissioners?
a week from tonight.
A week from tonight?
Yeah, we've got a backlog of cases that we're going to go ahead and address. They'll be hearing some of the zoning cases that you heard in March,
Oh, wow.
February and March. And so we're trying to catch up with a bit of a backlog.
Okay. Then, of course, you understand that the commissioners' meeting is also a public meeting which you can attend, and you continue to voice your opposition to it.
My only question on the statement is the last sentence that we're using the light zoning.
Light industrial, it's a
The one
classification.
across the road, I thought that was grandfathered in.
It's zoned light industrial. The site design and what you see, how the site is,
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
no worries, how it's developed is grandfathered, but the zoning, it is actually zoned light industrial.
And thanks for the reminder, thank you.
You're
Paul,
welcome.
can you repeat the vote for us?
Yes, it's four to,
And one against?
4 and one abstention.
One abstention?
Did you abstain, Mike?
No, I just didn't.
You didn't vote?
I mean,
Oh, you-
the motion was
one
made
no
and
vote.
voted on.
No, we just, okay. Want to make sure we were doing it right. It does count as a.
Well, you mentioning what you did about taking a sentence out is helpful.
Okay.
Unless there's any objections, I'm going to adjourn the planning board meeting so that we can convene the Board of Adjustment meeting. Hearing no objections, the planning board meeting is temporarily adjourned.
Will you do a motion to adjourn?
I don't think we need one, if there's, according to parliamentary procedure.
Okay,
I can ask for objections, and if there's no objections, we can go ahead and move forward.
you're on it.
Can I have
You
a
really
point
are,
of,
Paul.
just a point of clarification? John, are we okay doing that?
That's fine.
Proceed.
Any meeting can be adjourned in that fashion. Moving right along.
Oh, wait. Okay.
The May 11th, 2020 meeting of the Rockingham County Board of Adjustment is called to order. Staff will present our first case and only case.
We have a request for a variance which requires Board of Adjustment approval. Case 2020-11 at 1143 Whetstone Creek Road. It's a 2-acre property that wishes to have a home occupation in an accessory building. I'll explain that more fully in a minute. I want to make sure that you understand where the property is located. And the surrounding road network and properties, the aerial view of the property. It's developed with a small home and a garage building right now. The property owner wishes to have a home occupation. Currently, our definition of a home occupation is that it's entirely within a dwelling unit. And this ask is to vary that to allow a home occupation to be in a residential accessory building rather than inside the dwelling unit. The applicant has submitted their application for justification, a site plan that shows the proximity of the structure to the home and the interconnectivity of the two. And there were no calls or emails in support or opposition of this case, as for the others, I think that, yeah. This, I will say, and Emily and I talked about this a lot, whether this should be a text amendment to create another home occupation opportunity in home and outside of home. And my choice was to, and because of the way our current ordinance is now, and this is for a very particular situation, was to recommend a variance of that situation. And in your review of it, whatever conditions and the way the site is organized can help inform future amendment to allow this type of home occupation. The way home occupations are defined pretty typically in the planning industry is to use this threshold of being within the residence as a way to keep people from operating standalone commercial businesses at their home. So this applicant is asking, instead of that, their threshold is that it's another residential building that is connected to their home intimately by the site. Are there questions?
This is the case where, where they can't really add on to their house because of the arrangement of underground utilities.
That's correct. And the house is, it's an interesting case because the house, the footprint of the home would make it very difficult to conduct the building with the business within the home,
I read that.
as well as the site constraints around it.
Does the building that they're seeking or asking for is already built, is that it?
That's correct. They would convert it.
And has it met all the building code requirements?
Not as yet. Should this be approved, they would have and I believe they've already spoken to a builder about what they would have to do to the building to retrofit it. They've spoken to the chief building inspector about it. I've been out there as well, just to get some initial ideas of what it would take, but the building would be brought up to standard.
Okay. And would there be a time frame for that?
No, once should the variance be approved, it would be up to the applicant and the amount of, they wouldn't be able to occupy the building until the work was done.
Gotcha.
Put it that way, yeah. They'd get a certificate of occupancy, Paul,
Okay.
before they could operate.
That's what I was leading up to.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, I mean, I figured out.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Sure.
Sure.
If you can just explain to me why we wouldn't handle this the way we did the Harrison case, the special use permit for a rural family occupation?
The acreage requirement would not have been met. The property owner doesn't have the acreage, and it's a different situation with the Harrisons. I mean, and we certainly went over that option with them, but it wasn't an option for them
The 3-acre minimum?
to increase the
For
size of their
special
property,
use.
yeah, to 3 acres.
Any other questions for staff?
Just so I'm clear, they're living there and then they were working out of their,
They have a business elsewhere that they're renting space for the business, and the desire is to bring the business home. And I will, the applicant can speak for herself, but the idea is she wanted to actually get this work done while she was unable to operate the business. She wanted to make the move and be ready for, excuse me, for when she was able to open again.
No other questions? Thank you, Carrie. Deborah Peters? If you would, ma'am, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence and testimony you shall present to the Rockingham County Board of Adjustment on the matters at hand shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And now, if you would please, for the record, give us your name and address.
Deborah Peters, 1143 Whetstone Creek Road, Stoneville,
Okay,
North
thank
Carolina.
you. And what is it that you would, beyond what's in your application, what is it that you would like the Board of Adjustment to know about your request?
I just would love to bring my business home and practice from there. I've been doing this business in Wentworth for 11 years, and I built up a client base, so I know my clients pretty well, comfortable bringing them to my home location now to be able to do this and be closer to my husband while he goes through some health issues.
Are there any questions for Ms. Peters?
I have a question. Ms. Peters, what exactly do you do here?
Therapeutic massage.
So you wouldn't be making anything, or?
No. Pretty much one-on-one, one client in, they leave, another client comes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Peters?
I have a question. Your application indicates, I think, that the structure was built as a car wash. Has it been operated? Has that business been operating
That
lately,
business
recently?
operated probably maybe 18 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't used it as a car wash detailing service probably after the first couple of years that we've done that.
Okay.
So the building has been vacant for a long time?
Yeah, built as a business, and he got a different job, and we did not pursue the car wash and detailing in full.
Okay. But it can be upgraded to meet the building code, you feel?
It can. I've had the building inspector out there. He's viewed it, he's looked at it. I've had construction people out there to look at it. HVAC person, electrician's been out, plumber's been out. They've all looked at it. They've all called Mark Langle and asked specific questions about the difference between what he would request and require based on what I have now and what it should be to bring it up to code.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Peters? Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Discussion? Then can we hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the planning board approve case 2020-11 with the following 4 conclusions necessary as listed in the staff report, 1 through 4.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the application for a variance for case number 2020-11. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. The vote was unanimous, and application for variance is granted. Unless there's any objection, we now need to adjourn the Board of Adjustment meeting so that we can return to the Planning Board meeting.
Actually, I had it set up where you can just do your other business as part of the Board of Adjustment and
We
then
have to adjourn
at
this.
the end,
Uh,
unless you,
Well, when we discuss old business and new business, it pertains to the Planning Board, so technically we have to get out of one and go back to the other. We have to adjourn as the Planning Board, not the Board of
That's a
Adjustment.
good point, Paul.
If we had just one case for the Board of Adjustment, we could do it. But since we have a bifurcated meeting here, we have to return to the previous. So hearing no objections, the Board of Adjustment meeting is adjourned, and the Planning Board meeting is reconvened. At this time, we'd like to hear from staff about any old business.
other than I think from now on, we'll put the Board of Adjustment first. That makes sense, and then we can.
According to the
adjourn.
bylaws, the Planning Board meeting has to precede the Board of
Okay,
Adjustment meeting.
okay. You are on it.
I'm on it tonight.
Yes, you are.
I'm on a roll.
Carrie, I have one quick question. How is the land consultant, how's that process going with the new?
Really, really well. He's, a huge piece of the work was to reorganize the UDO so that it was usable and readable. And he's done that. He's got a new structure. We're going to be meeting with that advisory group on Wednesday to go over that structure and start digging into the actual UDO. And he's mostly going to be presenting the change in structure, and after everyone approves that, I'll finally have something I can publish, just to kind of see how you feel about it. He's counting the project about 50% complete at this point, so on target for February or March completion.
Any new business before the board?
None.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. The meeting of the planning board is adjourned.